Everyone. This is the Monday morning market update for really all the market, but specifically XRP, Stellar, some of the other major alts. I start out with a chart here with Bitcoin to just go back and look at the entire history of the asset. Well, at least since there was charting for it, back here in May of 2013. And what I would just want to start off with is, trying to ask the question of where is Bitcoin and what is Bitcoin currently in the process of doing? I believe that Bitcoin is going to run most likely to around $250,000 to $280,000 before the end of this cycle, before we put in another, bear market for 2 to 2.5 years. And so with that, that's why I'm bullish on the overall market, because if you look at the history of an asset such as XRP, Ethereum, Stellar, any of those, the alts expansion in the market really only happens when Bitcoin is breaking into a new all-time high. And so that is clearly the conditions right now with Bitcoin. I love this volume. I was concerned, way back here that we saw this declining volume. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is the end of Bitcoin. But, this is a good volume pickup so far. And, so far in the last several weeks, I've loved seeing this green buy volume come in. We definitely want to see that volume continue to pick up week over week. And I think that will take us to anywhere between 250 to 280, maybe even 320. On Bitcoin. And so with that said, I bring this over and try to ask the question, where is the Elliott Wave count with Bitcoin currently? And I think what we see is this was a wave one coming off the bear market bottom back in November of 2022. Then we had wave three, then we put 4 in there in August of 24. Then, in November to December of 24, we had kind of this first wave one push of the fifth wave for Bitcoin. This was wave 2, and now I think we're putting in wave 3, and then ultimately wave 5 up here around 250 to 280. So if that's my bias, and my bias is ultimately bullish on the market, I think you have a lot of fundamental news over the last year with Bitcoin, ETFs, stablecoin regulation, other crypto regulation, the end of the Ripple SEC lawsuit. Taking into account all those factors and studying the cycles, I know there's people who are going to disagree with the Bitcoin cycle theory, but, clearly we're in the half of the cycle, the 4-year cycle, where after the halving, Bitcoin has a supply shock run up. And I saw a graphic earlier this morning. I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but I do. But I did see a graphic where we are at the lowest supply on exchanges with the history of Bitcoin. I believe right at about 2 million Bitcoin at any one point on any given exchanges worldwide. So I believe we're clearly in a demand market still, and the supply is low. So when you come over here to XRP, and before I get to XRP this morning and tell you where I believe we're at, I just want to recall you to the Stellar video that I made yesterday. I don't think it's insignificant because Stellar really gives us an insight into the overall altcoin market, because I don't believe you can make the argument that this was wave one here, but this was actually the first wave one impulse, and now Stellar starting its new wave 3, and it'll stop somewhere up here, and then there will be ultimately a wave 5. I said yesterday that could be $25. Depending on where wave 3 stops, that target can get adjusted. So it could be $13 to $16 on Stellar. There's some other, Elliott Wave counts, for example. Just do this quickly. I don't want this video to be too terribly long. I'm trying to keep these to 10 minutes so you guys can digest them fairly quickly. But if we, stop at 177, 188, $2 on Stellar for wave 3, then I believe wave 5 would only come up to about that $13 to $15 range. But for now, I'm going to hold the bias that I believe with a 7-year reaccumulation that Stellar's not just going to hit 177 for wave 3. I think it's going to come up to at least 415, 413. And then we'll see ultimately a fifth wave expansion up to $26. I know that's crazy, but stranger things can and have happened in crypto. So as we take that thought that Stellar is giving us an insight into that this was actually wave one, this wasn't wave three. And the reason I say that is because I come over here and I've seen a lot of Elliott Wave counts say that this was wave one, this is wave three, this is four, and now we're putting in a fifth, maybe up to $8 to $12. My problem with that is it ignores what Stellar is showing us, or it ignores what Ethereum is doing. I mean, if Ethereum is really going in for a 10,000 plus move, then I think the rest of the market, and I'm not even going to get into Ethereum today. It's its own different beast, and we'll have to cross that bridge later. Now, could it be possible that Stellar is unique and that it's doing its own unique Elliott Wave count? Sure, possible, but it's a very similar chart pattern to XRP, which has also been in a 7-year reaccumulation. Let me come over here to the Bitstamp chart. So do you reasonably conclude, can someone reasonably conclude that we go through a 7-year reaccumulation just to go hit an all-time high at $5? I mean, anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Or even $11 or $12. I mean, that's the argument I'm starting to think. And if this was actually wave one, well then, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot more left in this party. Now you might say, well, Sugar, that's great, but we're dealing with time, we're dealing with, the overall market. I mean, I really think we're going to be bullish until the end of this year. I think January of 2026, you really start needing to get cautious, being very concerned about where the overall markets are. Of course, granted, nothing random happens in our nation or world. That's always possible. But yeah, let me just take this off for a second just to clean that up. So we have a 7-year reaccumulation. Not only do we have, look at how many days that was. Just to show you. I know you guys probably have looked at the same chart I have. But that's almost 2,500 days. What is that? Let me pull out my calculator. 2,500 divided by 365. 7 years, roughly. And then on top of that, you just had a 7-month reaccumulation. Right? And that's just underneath the old all-time high. So does someone really think that we did a 7-year reaccumulation and a 7-month reaccumulation, and we're only going to come hit $5 or $6? I mean, that's possible. And certainly with XRP, that could be possible because we know that XRP loves to let us down. If you've held this coin for 8 years, you know that it has let us down for a long time. But the question is that going to be likely? I just don't think that's likely. I start thinking 11 to 13 is certainly likely for a midterm target, and then 26, 30. You say, but what about market cap? That's too high for the market cap. Well, go to marketcapof.com. Hold on, let me see if I can pause this. I don't think I can pause this recording. I'll do that later. But just go to market cap of, just Google that, and then put in the market cap of Bitcoin compared to BTC, and it's well over $30. I think it's like 38 or 39 bucks. So I'm not saying we're going to get there, but could we get to the low 20s? Yeah. And then could we go sideways for 7 to 10 weeks and then put in yet another high to surprise and shock the market? Yeah. So I just start with this zoomed out view to ask the question of what's most likely and what's most reasonable after a 7-year reaccumulation and huge bull sign, I think, until it's invalidated, a 7-month reaccumulation underneath the old all-time high. Guys, we're about to go a lot higher. And so this is really causing me just to take in these data points to re-examine where we are and where we might be headed. And that's all we can do in trading. People think that Elliott Wave or technical analysts are either, magicians and they know everything, or they don't know anything. And guys, you know that's not that black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray in between those two extremes. And all we're doing as technical analysts, sorry, I'll get that right, is we're just trying to take the data that we see and make the best possible decisions at any given moment. So as we zoom in on the daily, here's where we currently sit. We continue to confirm this bull flag. We really need to start breaking out with volume here. What I love about the daily candle so far is we're right at the previous day's volume already. So over the next, how many hours is that? Over the next 11 hours, we've got a lot of time here to put in good solid volume. What I would really love to see is volume that takes out the July 11th volume on the daily. And so that's on the daily. On the 6 hour, yeah, you know, we continue to show this parabola and this advance. It looks like we're accumulating upwards. Again, if you come back over here to Stellar, it's already put in a new all-time high, or not new all-time high, but a new local high since July 11th. So I like that. And so what's happening here at $3 is you just have a huge sell wall. And here over hopefully the next few hours, that's going to be eaten and taken out. And all I've got to just say is once a 7-year and once a 7-month resistance is taken out, how high do you think we're going to go? Guys, again, this is what you call price discovery. There is no previous price on XRP above 337, 340-ish. There's no price above that. So what happens here is really up to anyone's best guess. You have no supply levels to see, oh, there's resistance. Oh, there's resistance. We're just giving you, you know, again, come back, look at the overall macro. I know I'm beating a dead horse. And then here's the thing. Here's what I really want you to notice. Once you cross a creek, there's no coming back. Even in that scare dump in March of 2020, and man, that was cool to watch, wasn't it? How many of you smashed the like, put a comment below if you were here in 2020 and you bought 11 and 12 cents on XRP? But I guarantee you there was a creek we were never going to cross with XRP. And what you're about to see happen is you're about to see another creek get crossed that will probably never be revisited on XRP, even if we're being conservative and say, okay, there's your creek. There's a new paradigm coming. If we've collected for 7 years and now 7 months underneath the old all-time high, you tell me where price is going. I can only give you my best guesses at this point. And I'm giving you conservative targets because even if some people sell at $8 to $10, that's life-changing for them. And that's okay. Let them sell. At no point should we be mad where somebody chooses to buy or sell. You do you. Don't worry about what other people do. Don't worry about where I'm taking a trade position and, you know, selling or buying. Every person, this is a, you know, this isn't really player versus player. This is player versus you in the mirror. And it's really about your own psychology. Okay, so enough philosophizing. So as we come down here to the 4 hour, we're looking good once again. Nothing that I'm seeing so far. We're just, you know, chopping here a little bit against $3. You know, obviously I want to see us continue higher here. You know, this might be where you want to start considering some stop losses just in case they're faking us out. This could be an ABC like this. You can't rule it out until it's not, until it's invalidated, right? So this could be A, B. And we could either come down here for a C here, or we could come back to this area, you know, low 260s for a C wave. That is still possible. I would argue that that's still possible until we get above, start closing and confirming on an hourly candle above the 1,272, right? So we've struck the 1.113. XRP loves to do this in modified ABC waves. It loves to put in an A wave, fake everybody out and think that we're holding. Then it comes up here for a B, and then we put in a C. That is still possible. So don't get shaken out if that happens, but that is still possible. But so far we're looking good. Come down here to the hourly. Again, I don't want to see us losing 276. I don't want to see us lose that pivot low there. Could this be a 1, 2, 3, 4 overall wave 1, and now we put in a 2? Possible. But I would like to see this parabola continue to move higher. So let's see what happens. Are we going to get news that breaks that? Are we going to get any kind of price action that comes in with Bitcoin? It looks like Bitcoin is going to continue up here to at least 125 for its internal smaller wave 3 move. So yeah, that's where we're at this morning. Hope everyone has a great week, a great Monday. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave those below. What am I not seeing? Let me know. Would love to hear your thoughts on the whole idea of the 7-year reaccumulation, now the 7-month accumulation. Do you do that if you're going to, go to zero? Or is it reasonable to assume we're going to put in a new all-time high on XRP and the rest of these coins, right? So anyway, have a good day, and thanks for listening. And please like and subscribe, and I will hop on here throughout the day and also throughout the week as I have further thoughts on the market. Thanks.